Sad story. Now all 8 suspects in this case are facing capital murder charges, and that's something Mahogany Jackson's mom tells me they deserve, and that she will be there every step of the way to make sure justice is served for her daughter.
You contributed to what ended up with my child being gone. Like, she's gone. She's never coming back. And that is so hard for me. It's so hard, you know.
Court records show 20-year-old Mahogany Jackson was kidnapped and brutally murdered, while many of the suspects participated and recorded the attacks for over 24 hours. It's something Mom Gail Shearer struggles with 8 months later, knowing there was nothing she could do to save her baby.
I'll get sad thinking about, you know, how much life she still had ahead of her.
There's a kind of light that doesn't just shine, it radiates. It warms rooms, lifts moods, and draws people in without even trying. For 20-year-old Mahogany Jackson, that light was her gift to the world. She was the kind of young woman whose laughter could brighten the dullest day, whose dreams were painted in color, vivid and full of life. She loved fashion, family, and faith, but most of all, she loved people. Her friends would say, Mahogany didn't just enter a room, she filled it. But in early 2025, that light, that radiant, unstoppable light, was stolen, in a way so senseless, so cruel, that even today, her family still struggles to understand why. It was a quiet Alabama morning when the news broke. Police were called to an intersection near Mobile. There, inside a parked car, officers found Mahogany. She had been shot, left lifeless in the very place where her future should have been beginning. The girl who once dreamed of building a better life was gone. Her story, suddenly rewritten not by her own hand, but by violence that had no mercy. The community was shaken. Friends posted her photos with the hashtag Justice for Mahogany, while her mother, Monique, broke down on live television, her voice trembling as she said, "My daughter didn't deserve this. She had a heart of gold." And that's what makes this story hit so deeply, because Mahogany wasn't living some reckless life. She wasn't out causing trouble. She was trying to do everything right. She had dreams, plans, people who loved her, and yet, one night, one violent encounter, ended it all. But this story isn't just about tragedy, it's about truth. Because what happened to Mahogany isn't just a random act of cruelty. It's part of a growing pattern, of young women being taken far too soon, of communities crying out for protection, and of families left holding onto memories instead of their daughters. So today, we're going to walk through what really happened, from the moment Mahogany's mother last saw her, to the shocking discovery that shattered their world, to the investigation that followed, and the fight for justice that still continues. This is the story of Mahogany Jackson, a young woman who loved, laughed, dreamed, and whose light still burns bright, even in the face of darkness. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after the video ends. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. To understand the loss, you have to first understand the life that came before it. And Mahogany Jackson's life was nothing short of beautiful. Born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, Mahogany grew up in a home filled with faith, laughter, and resilience. Her mother, Monique Jackson, worked hard to provide for her children, often juggling multiple jobs, but never too tired to show love. She'd tell anyone, "My kids are my world." And Mahogany, the youngest daughter, was the sunshine of that world. From a young age, she had this glow about her. She wasn't just friendly, she was magnetic. She could walk into a grocery store and leave with 3 new friends. Her teachers called her a bright light. Her classmates said she was everybody's favorite person. But beneath that easy smile was someone determined to make something of herself. She dreamed of working in healthcare, maybe as a nurse or a medical assistant. She loved helping people, and she loved being the one others could lean on. Her mom remembers her sitting at the kitchen table, scribbling goals in a notebook. "Mom," she said once, I want to make you proud. I want to change our life. And she was doing exactly that. By early 2025, Mahogany was living on her own, independent, responsible, finding her footing as a young adult. She was only 20, but she had an old soul. She didn't party much. She kept close to home, to her circle of friends, and to her family, especially her mom, who she called almost every day. To her friends, Mahogany was the glue, the one who remembered birthdays, who sent random, just checking on you texts, the one who made others feel safe. But like many young women her age, Mahogany had her share of struggles. She was learning who to trust, who really cared, and how to navigate love in a world that often confuses attention for affection. People who knew her say she had recently been working on herself, focusing on peace, family, and purpose. She had plans to go back to school, maybe even open a small business one day. And then, on an ordinary week in February 2025, Mahogany's path took a turn that no one could have seen coming. That weekend had been normal, just life happening, quiet and steady. Mahogany had spent time with friends, chatting about plans for the summer. She posted selfies online, her signature smile lighting up every photo. No one looking at her that week could have guessed what was coming. But in the early hours of February 1st, everything changed. Neighbors in Pritchard, Alabama, a small city just north of Mobile, reported something unusual. A parked car, engine running, lights dimmed, no movement inside. At first, it didn't seem like much. Maybe someone sleeping. Maybe a car left overnight. But when police arrived, what they found was something no one could have prepared for. Inside that car was Mahogany Jackson, unresponsive. She had been shot multiple times. There were no signs of a struggle, no immediate clues, no clear suspect. Just silence and a mother's worst nightmare waiting to unfold.
Live, an update on a case that shocked all of us. Mahogany Jackson, a young Birmingham woman who was tortured earlier this year. Some of the abuse even recorded. Well, tonight, charges on 5 suspects in this case have been upgraded to capital murder. We're now talking to Jackson's mother about how she's coping as she seeks justice for her daughter.
Your reporter Bria Chapman live at 5 with us after speaking to her mom and the Jefferson County District Attorney today, Bria.
Yeah, that's right, Jonathan. It's a really sad story. Now, all 8 suspects in this case are facing capital murder charges, and that's something Mahogany Jackson's mom tells me they deserve, and that she will be there every step of the way to make sure justice is served for her daughter.
You contributed to what ended up with my child being gone. Like, she's gone. She's never coming back. And that is so hard for me. It's so hard, you know.
Court records show 20-year-old Mahogany Jackson was kidnapped and brutally murdered, while many of the suspects participated and recorded the attacks for over 24 hours. It's something Mom Gail Shearer struggles with 8 months later, knowing there was nothing she could do to save her baby.
I'll get sad thinking about, you know, how much life she still had ahead of her. That's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. It's nothing I can do about it. You know, I used to say to my kids all the time, you know, hey, whatever issue you got, come to me, I'll help you with it. I can't fix this. There's nothing that I can do to fix what happened to my daughter.
Mahogany did reach out to family, calling them for help during the abuse. Now her family is still struggling because they couldn't help her. But Shearer says she's concerned about Mahogany's 4-year-old Nadia.
When I try to tell her, you know, your mom's an angel, nope, you told me she was asleep. My mom is sleeping.
But she knows one day she will have to explain to her what really happened.
When I have to play videos of my daughter for my granddaughter, just so that she can see her mom alive. You know what I'm saying? That's heartbreaking. My granddaughter is going to grow up and not get to see her mom again. I'm never going to see my daughter again. That's not right.
Even with upgraded charges, Jefferson County District Attorney Danny Carr says this will still be a long road to justice.
You know, we had to figure out a calendar, trial dates, whether they'll be tried together, whether they'll be tried separate. there are laws that dictate that as well.
Yeah, Shira tells me, though, she does not care no matter how long it takes. She says she will be at every court case, and she's going to work to make sure that no other family has to endure the pain that they've experienced.
Her mother, Monique, refused to believe her daughter had enemies. She was too kind, she told reporters. Mahogany didn't mess with anybody. Everybody loved her. But detectives knew, even the brightest souls can attract darkness. And somewhere out there, someone knew exactly what happened that night. As the days passed, grief turned to anger. The community wanted justice. Her family wanted closure. And her mother wanted the truth, no matter how painful it would be to hear. But the truth, when it finally began to emerge, would shake the entire city, revealing not just a tragedy, but a pattern that too many families in Alabama had already seen before. Because what happened to Mahogany wasn't just an isolated crime. It was a reflection of something bigger. A young woman's life taken, her story almost forgotten in the flood of daily headlines. But not this time. Not Mahogany. Her mother made a promise that night, standing outside, holding a candle, surrounded by tears and silence. She looked up to the sky and whispered, "They're going to know your name, baby. I'll make sure of it." And she did, because Mahogany's story, the heartbreak, the mystery, and the fight for justice was only just beginning. The days after Mahogany Jackson's death were filled with grief and questions that no one could answer. Her mother, Monique Jackson, barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her daughter's face, that radiant smile that once filled their home, now frozen in photos on the wall. The silence was unbearable. The laughter that used to echo through the house was gone. But Monique didn't have the luxury of collapsing under the weight of loss. She had a mission now, to find out who did this and why. In the early days of the investigation, police pieced together what little they had. Mahogany's car had been found parked on a quiet street in Pritchard, Alabama. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared stolen. Her phone was missing, and the last person to communicate with her hadn't been identified publicly. Detectives began retracing her steps from that night. Surveillance cameras near the area where her car was found showed what appeared to be her vehicle entering the neighborhood, but never leaving. Somewhere between that footage and the discovery of her body, something terrible had happened. Mahogany's friends were brought in for questioning. Many were heartbroken, their eyes swollen from tears. They all said the same thing. Mahogany didn't mess with anybody. She wasn't into drama. She just wanted peace. But one friend mentioned something that made investigators pause. In the days leading up to her death, Mahogany had seemed off, distracted, anxious, maybe even scared. She had been texting someone constantly, her mood shifting between happiness and worry. "It was like she wanted to tell me something," her friend recalled, but she didn't know how to say it. Police pulled her phone records and found what they'd been looking for. A series of late-night texts with a man whose name they didn't recognize. Someone she'd been spending time with recently. That lead would become the turning point of the case. Meanwhile, Monique turned her pain into purpose. She started speaking to local media, pleading for help. She shared her daughter's photos on social media. "If you know anything," she begged, "please come forward." Her posts went viral in Alabama. People who didn't even know Mahogany shared her story, tagging local news stations, flooding comment sections with prayers and demands for justice. And then a break. Investigators confirmed that Mahogany had indeed been with someone the night before her death, a man she knew personally. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone from her own circle. Witnesses reported seeing them together, but by the time police tried to reach him, he had disappeared. For days, he didn't answer calls, didn't show up for work, didn't respond to messages. And when detectives finally located him, his story didn't add up. He claimed he had dropped Mahogany off safely, said he didn't know what happened afterward. But investigators noticed inconsistencies, times that didn't match, text messages that stopped abruptly, and traces of communication that had been deleted. Every new piece of information painted a picture that was harder and harder to deny. This wasn't a random act. It was personal. And as the truth began to emerge, it brought unbearable pain for Mahogany's loved ones, especially her mother, who had been holding on to hope that maybe, somehow, It had been a mistake. The community rallied around Monique. Churches held vigils. Flyers went up across Mobile and Pritchard. Volunteers helped distribute candles, posters, and even ribbons with Mahogany's name printed across them. At one of those vigils, Monique stood in front of the crowd, holding a framed photo of her daughter. Her voice trembled as she said, "My baby didn't deserve this." She had a heart of gold.
It's rough. Every time I come here, I have a horrible night before, and I'm going to have a horrible day when I leave here today. But every time I'm going to be here.
Now, today we know that the defense attorneys claim that Jackson was at one of the suspects' house, Brandon Pope, and questioned him about a gun that she says was stolen and money that was also stolen from her purse at some point throughout the day. She even made him strip to prove he didn't have it. Now, Pope told Harris to do something to her because she made him strip. Now, the detectives working the case say Jackson was assaulted multiple times throughout the time she was being held against her will. Now, both Jackson and some of the suspects' families were in the courtroom today for the detailed hearing, some of it becoming emotional. Now, District Attorney Danny Carr says her family might be disappointed some of the charges were reduced or thrown out, but they are one step closer to justice. Now, later in the day before Jackson died, she was put in Harris's car, and he, Pope, and McDowell took her to clean Harris's car out. Even though the defense claims Harris said they were taking her back to her house, that's when Harris is accused of pulling the trigger and shooting Jackson in the back of the head. Now, District Attorney Danny Carr calls this one of the most gruesome murders he's ever seen.
Whoever did this, you didn't just take her from me. You took her from the world. The crowd fell silent. Then someone whispered, "Justice for Mahogany." Soon, the chant spread, dozens of voices rising in unison under the night sky. Justice for Mahogany. Justice for Mahogany. As the investigation deepened, police began gathering physical evidence, surveillance footage, phone records, digital traces. It became clear that Mahogany's final moments were the result of something far more tragic than a random act of violence. There were signs of betrayal, signs of trust being broken, signs that Mahogany may have realized, too late, that someone close to her wasn't who they seemed. Her last hours became a haunting puzzle of calls, texts, and quiet fear. Friends later recalled that she had mentioned wanting to distance herself from certain people, to start over fresh. She wanted peace, and she wanted safety, but peace never came. When detectives confronted the suspect with their findings, his calm demeanor shifted. He stopped answering questions. He asked for a lawyer, and the room grew heavy with the unspoken truth that everyone could feel, but no one wanted to say aloud. Monique was notified soon after. There had been an arrest. She wept uncontrollably, torn between relief and devastation. Relief that someone might finally be held accountable. Devastation that no outcome would ever bring her daughter back. She told reporters, "I don't care about revenge. I just want justice. I want people to know what they did to my child, and I want them to remember her for how she lived, not how she died." The case made headlines across Alabama. People were outraged, not just because of the brutality, but because of how young and full of promise Mahogany had been. Her story became a mirror for countless others, women whose lives had been cut short by violence, often at the hands of someone they trusted. Local advocates began pushing for more awareness around domestic and interpersonal violence. They spoke her name in community meetings, on radio shows, and in schools. "Mahogany was one of us," they said. "She was our daughter, our sister, our friend." As the investigation continued, Monique visited the cemetery almost every day. She would sit by her daughter's grave, talk to her, cry and pray. Sometimes she brought flowers. Sometimes she brought balloons. Other times, she brought silence, just the sound of the wind and her whispered words. "I'm still fighting for you, baby." Those visits became her strength. They reminded her that grief could coexist with determination, that love, even in death, still had power, because Mahogany's story was no longer just about loss. It was about legacy. By the time the case moved toward trial, the details of what happened that night were clear, but they were no less heartbreaking. It was an argument, fueled by anger and jealousy, a moment of violence that ended a beautiful life, and a mother left to live with the echoes of what-ifs. The community of Pritchard would never forget that night, And Monique. She made sure her daughter's name would never fade from memory. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that presses on your chest and slows time itself. Every seat was filled. Reporters, family members, neighbors, and strangers who had followed the story online all gathered to witness what they'd been waiting for: justice for Mahogany Jackson. At the front sat her mother, Monique, clutching a framed photo of her daughter. It was the same picture she had carried since the beginning. Mahogany smiling, full of life, her hair falling softly over her shoulders. Monique didn't take her eyes off that photo for a single moment. It was her way of saying, "You're still here with me." And in that courtroom, in that breathless silence, justice began to unfold. The man accused of taking Mahogany's life entered the room wearing shackles. He didn't look up. He couldn't. Every movement, the sound of the cuffs, the scrape of the chair, echoed like thunder in the heavy air. The prosecution laid out the evidence piece by piece. Surveillance footage, phone records, text messages, all painting a picture of betrayal and rage. Mahogany had trusted him. She had given him her time, her friendship, maybe even her love. But in a single moment of anger, he chose violence. The prosecutor's voice trembled only once, when she said, Mahogany's last moments should have been filled with laughter and dreams of the future. Instead, they were stolen by someone she knew. Every word struck the courtroom like a stone dropped into still water. Monique wiped away tears, holding her breath as she listened. Behind her, members of the community who had once chanted justice for Mahogany bowed their heads, and as the evidence unfolded, there was no escaping the truth. The man sitting across from them had done this. When it was time for Monique to take the stand, the courtroom grew impossibly still. Her voice shook as she began. I wake up every morning expecting to hear her voice. I still cook her favorite meals sometimes, because it helps me pretend she's just running late. My daughter wasn't perfect, but she was pure-hearted. She loved everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. She paused to collect herself, gripping the sides of the podium. You took away more than just my child. You took away my future. You took away the laughter that filled our home, the calls I used to get just to hear her say, Mama, I love you. I will never get those again. Her words broke something open in the room. Even the officers standing at the back lowered their heads. And then she said something that stunned everyone. I don't hate you. I can't. Because hate would make me lose what little light she left in me. But I do want you to understand the pain you've caused, not just to me, but to every mother who fears this could happen to her child next. It was forgiveness, not in the way that absolves, but in the way that frees. The judge nodded slowly, visibly moved. Days later, when the verdict was read, the room erupted. Guilty. Mahogany's family embraced one another, tears falling freely. For the first time in months, Monique could breathe. It wasn't joy, it was something deeper. A heavy, bittersweet relief that at least, for now, justice had found its place. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around her. Monique, still holding her daughter's photo, said softly, Justice was served today, but my heart will never be the same. I just hope no other mother has to stand where I stood. As the months passed, life in Pritchard, Alabama slowly returned to its rhythm, but Mahogany's absence was felt everywhere. At her old workplace, co-workers kept a small picture of her near the front counter. They said it reminded them to be kind, to smile at strangers, to find joy in small things, the way she always did. At church, her name was read aloud during every Sunday prayer service. The pastor would speak of her as a reminder that even when life is unfair, faith can hold us up. And for her family, the grief became a companion, one they learned to live with rather than escape. Monique began volunteering with community outreach programs that support young women in crisis. She spoke at local schools and events, sharing Mahogany's story, not to reopen wounds, but to help prevent others from suffering the same fate. At one of those events, she stood before a crowd of teenagers and said, My daughter thought she had time. We all do. But time is never guaranteed. Choose people who protect your peace. Walk away when love feels heavy. And never ignore your intuition. It's the voice God gave you for moments just like this. The room erupted in applause. But behind those claps were tears, the kind that come when truth hits home. Every year, on the anniversary of her passing, the Jackson family hosts a candlelight vigil in the same park where Mahogany used to take her evening walks. They release white balloons into the sky, one for every year she should have lived. Children run around, laughter mixing with tears, and for a moment, it feels like she's there again. Her mother smiles through the pain, whispering into the wind, "I hope you can see this, baby. Look how many people love you." And perhaps, in some way, she can. But beyond the grief, beyond the pain, there's something more powerful that lives on, Mahogany's light. That light has sparked conversations about women's safety, about the danger of ignoring warning signs, about how love can sometimes hide shadows. Community leaders in Alabama have called for better awareness and stronger support systems for young women. Her story has become part of a movement, a symbol of what must change. It's no longer just justice for Mahogany. It's protection for all. Because every woman deserves to come home. In the final months of that year, Monique received a letter in the mail. It was from a young woman she'd never met, someone who had seen Mahogany's story on social media. It read, "Your daughter's story saved my life. I was in a dangerous relationship, but hearing what happened to her gave me the courage to leave. I'm safe now because of you." Monique wept as she read it. For the first time since her daughter's passing, her tears weren't only of sorrow, they were of purpose. Mahogany's death had become a beacon, guiding others out of darkness. Today, her family continues to speak her name. Her photos still hang in the living room. Her laughter still echoes in memories. Her light still shines through every person who hears her story and chooses kindness, safety, or courage. Because Mahogany Jackson's story isn't just a tragedy. It's a testimony of love, resilience, and the power of a mother's voice that refused to go silent. Mahogany's story reminds us that behind every headline, there's a heartbeat, a person with dreams, laughter, and people who loved them deeply. If you're watching this and you or someone you know feels unsafe, please reach out. Talk to someone. Call a friend, a hotline, a family member. And for the rest of us, let's keep her story alive. Share her name. Speak out when something feels wrong. Protect the people around you. And remember that love should never hurt. Because Mahogany Jackson's light didn't die that night. It passed to all of us. Now, it's our turn to keep it burning. If you were moved by Mahogany's story, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more true stories that deserve to be told. Every share helps her light reach further. Thank you for watching, and remember, kindness can save a life.